Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Travel Coffee Break, and in fact, this year's first edition of the Coffee Break. I'm Alistair Mackenzie, and as you know, we do this every week at this time, and I thought we'd kick off this year with a talk about aviation, the state of the aviation industry, really from the perspective of air passengers and what they're going to be encountering and experiencing during the year ahead. Of course, we've had a fairly grim year behind us in 2014, which, according to one authority, is, I think, the worst record for deaths in the airline industry in something like 15 years. So we're going to move on from that and try and be upbeat and look forward to what's going on ahead of us. And in order to do that, I've got 3.5 guests. I've got working from right to left, if you can see them at the bottom of the screen there. I've got Roger Bray, former travel editor of the Evening Standard, aviation correspondent, and actually, I think you were on one of the air passenger councils or something at one time, weren't you, Roger? Is that?
No, I still sit.
Is that right?
I still sit on a committee whose name is far too long to repeat here, which advises the CAA and the government on financial protection for air travellers.
Okay. I've got in the next window Mike Young, who many of you will know is my regular co-host on these Hangouts, and so Mike's going to be shoving in his 2 pennyworth every now and then, but he's going to be, I think, asking more questions than answering them, but I may be doing him a great disservice. To the left of him, I've got Malcolm Ginsberg, who I've known. I mean, this was fascinating. When we all gathered together in the green room a bit earlier, we were talking about our experiences in aviation, and particularly our first experiences. I've known Malcolm since the 1980s, when he was at that time working with Qatar Airways, who some people may remember, based down in Plymouth, and he's been probably one of the leading aviation correspondents ever since then, and runs the absolutely brilliant Business Travel News, BTN, which is a newsletter which he works on and produces usually very late at night on a Sunday night, so it's in our in trays ready to go on Monday mornings. And what Malcolm doesn't know about the aviation industry is barely worth printing. And lastly, this is the half, because Kerwin Mackenzie is, again, an aviation expert, aviation blogger, and runs a couple of sites advising people, particularly on ticketing, both for the people who work in the industry, surprisingly, and us normal mortals. Knows everything there is to know about ticketing, but at the moment is, I think, still silent. Is your mic not working yet, Kerwin? Yeah, not working yet. Okay. You're going to have to keep fighting with that, mate. And if you just keep talking, then you'll butt into the conversation anyway. So we'll hear you when it works. So okay, let's kick off. Malcolm, you've just come back from Toulouse. We were saying just before we started, because you were down visiting Airbus, and in particular their new aircraft, which is the A350. Tell us a little bit about that aircraft, because it's their equivalent of the Boeing 787, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very interesting aircraft. Of course, it's assembled in Toulouse, but it actually is a British aircraft. It's got wings from Chester, undercarriage from Gloucester, and engines from Rolls-Royce. Now, if you've been on an A330, which is a nice aircraft, this is actually another foot wider. So it's a very comfortable aircraft, and I think people are going to be very happy with it. The windows aren't so big as on the 787, but it's also pressurised for 6,000 feet. And they're going to make various versions of it. Qatar have got the first one. It's going into service on the 15th of this month on Frankfurt to Doha. And what Qatar is saying is their economy is so good they don't need a premium economy, and they're not running first class, so it's a two-class aircraft. The economy is good, no question of it, and the food's good and everything else, but at the end of the day, it's still nine abreast at the back, so there's no way you can get around that one. I think the A350 is going to be a good aircraft. It's not sold as well as the Dreamliner, which was there before, and this is the first time that Boeing have actually got ahead of Airbus. If you recall, 737 had been around a long time when the A320 arrived, and we still somehow think of the A320 as a very, very modern aircraft, and of course it's 20 years old, so we're going to see the new versions of it. Impressive aircraft, the A350. British Airways have got them on order, Iberia naturally, and would you believe Aer Lingus as well, amongst the other airlines.
Malcolm, I just wanted to say I'm sure Qatar's economy class is excellent, although I've only travelled in the front, I have to say, with them. But I like premium economy because of the leg room. I've got long legs, and I'm quite sure that their normal economy would still leave me fairly cramped.
No, I think you're right, Roger. And as you know, you tower above me. But I think they're being clever in just going for a two-class aircraft. British Airways are going for a four-class aircraft. It seems to be working for Qatar. None of those three big carriers in the Gulf have a premium economy. Be interesting to see who'll be the first one.
Yeah,
it is. But for passengers, it is a step change. It's a step change that was brought about with the Boeing Dreamliner, the 787, and is now being picked up by the Airbus A350. And it comes about because they're using new materials. Basically, they're using carbon fiber materials for wings and for the fuselage. It gives it incredible strength, but also it makes it very light. And one of the advantages of that, and particularly with the Dreamliner, is from a passenger experience. It was the first time people got to appreciate the size of the thing. They had big windows, they had big drop-down overhead lockers, and they had, as you mentioned, this much lower altitude pressurization. Normally when you get on an airplane, it's pressurized to around 10,000 feet or so. And these things, I think the Dreamliner is pressurized to something like 7,000 feet, and as you're saying, the Airbus A350 is something like 6,000 feet, which makes it a much more pleasant experience. It's not as the atmosphere is not as dry. It's much more humid. People don't feel quite so kind of wrung out at the end of a long haul flight. Is that a good summary? Do you think, Malcolm?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Also, the other interesting thing, and I flew, would you believe, on a Biman Bangladesh DC-10, one of the first of the wide bodies, 40 years old, and you suddenly realise the progress that's been made over the years. It's also got LED lighting on board, so the whole thing is a much nicer experience. These aircraft are going to be around for 20-25 years, and the extra wide body, they call it, is a fine plane. And the Dreamliner, they've really got the thing into production now. They're producing over 100 a year. So they
had a grisly time getting it going, didn't they?
Yeah, it's got over its problems. There was no problem with the Airbus introduction. I mean, Al Bakr, the chief executive of Qatar, once again appears to have been a bit pedantic, or allegedly so said Airbus. Qatar was saying, in fact, it was Airbus that were being awkward. It was a week late, but that's nothing these days. Let's see what happens when it gets into service and the Germans start flying on it out of Frankfurt. I think Lufthansa is going to feel the heat.
I'm certainly getting very good reports generally from people who have flown on the 787, the Dreamliner. They are saying that they're getting off the aeroplane feeling, as you put it, less wrung out than they have done on other aircraft. And I'm old enough to have flown on the Comet, so it is apparently a much more pleasant experience. I thought you were possibly going to raise George Osborne's exhortation to the airlines this morning, which is very well timed for this coffee break chat. That they should reduce their fares in line with the cut in aviation fuel, oil prices and aviation fuel prices. Your comments, please.
I can tell you one there quite straight away, because a friend of mine actually is involved in this hedging business. These airlines are buying their fuel at a much higher rate than is the case now. It's all a bit of gambling. So it's not like you and I going up to the fuel pump and saying, right, well, we can afford to go to an away match this week because the fuel's only a pound a gallon or a litre, whatever it is. These guys have been paying 80 pence or $80 rather for the Brent crude prices, and I believe that Ryanair, in fact, has really come a bit of a cropper on it. It's all a bit of rumour and conjecture. So whilst we expect the fares to come down, I don't think...
but yeah, and we can't really complain because I'm once again pulling age. I can remember the first time that fuel surcharges were introduced back in 1973, after the Arab-Israeli war that autumn, and everybody was moaning about the fact that the tour operators were slapping on fuel surcharges to reflect the increased costs that they were getting from charter airlines, and it was at that point, and then nobody, as far as I know, before that bought aviation fuel on the forward markets, and now, of course, they all do. So Malcolm's absolutely right. They will have already bought their fuel for a fair distance ahead. I mean, they don't buy it all.
It's a bit like turning a super tanker. They're buying so far in advance because they want to be able to know exactly what their costs are going to be, and that's the one way they can guarantee it. It just happens that their costs are rather high now. Cohen, are you how's it working for you? Can we? No, still going. There's got to be it'll be a volume button somewhere or something.
On mute?
I don't think he's on mute. No, it would start off being open. It's just frustrating. I suspect his mic has been claimed by another app or something. That's probably the reason for it. But either way, that is a shame. Well, keep if you can, Cohen, keep at it. But if you get discouraged and you want to give up, then we'll understand why. But it'll be great to hear from you. Let's. We were talking about the A350. I just wanted to ask you because when you were down, Malcolm, at Toulouse, one of the other aspects of that particular visit was that Qatar were picking up the keys to their shiny new A350, but also the keys to their shiny new A380 Super Jumbo, and it's the latest one off the production line. But at the same time, there was a suggestion from one of the Airbus senior people, financial director, that the A380 might not be with us for much longer. So what's the background to that, Malcolm?
One of the rules that you learn as a PR man, and I spent 20 years in PR, is never allow financial people to talk to the press. Only allow your salesman or your chief executive. Unfortunately, Airbus made the mistake of having this very honest guy from the financial department talk to the media, and they straight away picked up the point that the A380 is not selling. And he said, yes, we can't build them after 2018, of which a certain Mr. Clark in Dubai had an apoplexy, and others.
This is the CEO of Emirates Airline.
Yeah, boss of Emirates Airline, and the boss of Etihad, who is his great rival. There's no love lost between them. An Australian called James Hogan. When asked by yours truly at a press conference in Abu Dhabi how many more A380s are you going to order? He'd just taken the first of 10. He said none, quite emphatically. So we have a problem that nearly half the production of the 380 is going to one airline, and it's not a healthy state of affairs. They're hanging on, and they're going to have to come to a resolution of whether they cut back on the production in the hope that they're going to pick up some orders. But you see, it's getting a bit too big. There must be a point where the aircraft are too large actually to handle the passengers, or the airports handling those aircraft. If you recall, the 747 was said to have 450 seats. I'm sure Roger will back me up on that. There's none of them today have 400 seats, the 74s. And again with the 380, they were said to have 500 seats. Few people do, but most of them are down in the 450 class.
Yeah, well, you know, when I fly, I hardly ever, you know, flying out of the U.S., I hardly ever see any 747s. Most of my transatlantic flights are either on 757s, 767s, or 777s.
All twin engine
like
now.
I said, I hardly ever see at any, let's say Dallas-Fort Worth, I hardly see any 747s at all. So I can only imagine something like a 380 that's you know, much larger than a 777. I just can't imagine a place for them except maybe in Asia.
And yet there's a contradiction here, isn't there? Because the one major capacity problem at the world's airports is that of runway capacity. And you would think that the bigger the aircraft, the fewer the takeoffs and the fewer the movements, the fewer the takeoffs and landings, and that the A380 will be in great demand. It's a lot cheaper to provide the facilities to handle a larger plane load of people than it is to build new runways.
Yeah, it's this we may. I think what we're watching here is the not the end game, but the beginning of the end game, if you like, in that great debate that was kicked off, from memory, circa 2004. I seem to remember at Farnborough when Boeing and Airbus basically started talking about hub to hub and direct flying, and they were talking about the future for them as they saw it. And Boeing was saying, well, we think that, you know, we're going to see more single or twin-engined aircraft like their new 787 plan, and Airbus were going, no, we think it's going to be big aeroplanes with 4 engines. And this was the time, remember, when Airbus already had the A340, which looked like a Boeing 707, and Richard Branson was packing Rolls-Royce engines into them and flying them across the Atlantic. And that's, you know, that's they still exist, but they're the economics are not panning out terribly well. And the other big problem, if I'm not mistaken, and it may have been Malcolm who told me this, is that the original design for the Airbus A380 has a cockpit which is literally at the front of the aeroplane, where the Jumbo has a cockpit that's at the top of the aeroplane, if you see what I mean. And that means that as a cargo carrier, the A380 is flawed in a way that the 747 isn't, and that's not doing them any favors either. But you may, one of you two guys might be able to comment on that.
Well, that's quite true that the Airbus A380 was propagated as a cargo aircraft. They sold a few, but they found actually couldn't build it. And it's fascinating that Airbus appear to have got it wrong every time in the long-haul business. Their first real long-haul aircraft was the A340, right, which has not been a success. And some of Roger probably sat the back of the thing with me on that inaugural from Farnborough to, from Heathrow to Farnborough on it. And from that they escaped with the 330, which was the same aircraft, and a lot of the engineering, heavy engineering, became the 330, which itself has become profitable only because they haven't been able to get the next generation. You know, the 380 actually got delayed, so the 330 has done very well for itself. So the big twins seem to be the way to go. The most successful aircraft today, no question about it, is the 777. Passengers like it, airlines like it. You can see that all of the Emirates have got on it. I mean, it's just enormous. And now they're going to have the 777X, which would be quite interesting to see whether they can actually develop an existing aircraft where they can't put the titanium in and the carbon fibers or where they would like. I think it's getting on 55% of the 350 is carbon fibre, and another 15-20% titanium. The savings they claim are 20% of fuel.
Okay. We got a question in, actually a couple of questions in from Ron Marder, who Ron is asking, what are your favourite websites about air travel and aviation? Anybody?
I just say Malcolm's, don't we?
I couldn't possibly comment, as they say.
Yeah, I think I would. I mean, I would go along with that. If you want to know about what's actually happening in the news in the industry, then Malcolm's News. It's not so much a website because it's updated every week. It's more, I would call it more a newsletter. But it's a site in the sense that you can go to it. I think that is a key place to go. And otherwise.
I use Routes Online. I used to use. I don't write as much about the nuts and bolts of aviation as I used to, but I used to use Aviation Week quite a lot. Routes Online for the launch of new routes around the world is quite a useful and updated very regularly. It depends, I suppose, whether you're actually more interested in business or leisure travel.
There are also a number of sort of general travel sites like Skift, for example, which I like enormously. They've got very good aviation sections, and I'm about to refer to them in just a moment. But Ron also asks about favourite air travel apps. I don't know if anybody's got a favourite air travel app. For me, 24-hour Flight Radar is probably my favourite app, but it's not really a passenger app. I use it to track members of my family when my son Joe is flying to Kenya, as he did in September, or over to New York or Philadelphia. In fact, I did watch him on 24-hour Flight Radar. I watched his flight get to Philadelphia this summer and then turn left and wind up down at Dulles airport because there was I then discovered, I was wondering, why is it going down there? And realized, did some quick searching and discovered they had a huge weather problem, a series of storms that had come in. So I love watching that. It's always interesting when, for example, Virgin Airlines airplanes get into difficulty with their undercarriage, for example, and circle out around the western approaches and then off Brighton, dumping fuel before they land. So I would go for 24-hour Flight Radar. Anybody can improve on that one?
I'm a bit of a dinosaur. I don't tend to use apps, but for sure Malcolm up to speed than I am.
No, Roger and I are both of the same generation, I'm afraid. It's all got a bit beyond us. I mean, the fact that we're connected with you, Alistair, is a bit of a miracle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is the equivalent of the birth of the tiger moth, as far as I'm concerned.
That's Kerwin's just popped up again. It'd be interesting to see if there's any advance on the sound issue. You there, Kerwin?
I'm here.
Oh,
hey!
Man.
I'm delighted to welcome you. Kerwin, when I described earlier what you do, did I get it more or less right? Do you want to go back over it just so we know?
No, yes, you did. Yeah, you did a good job on that, so thank you.
Okay, I'm glad you're here because I was just coming to to a topic that I think you may well have a view on, and that's he said, looking for it quickly, this issue of the new website, and we were talking about websites a moment ago, called Skiplagged. Have you been following this, Kerwin?
Yeah, I've actually been following it. So I'm probably one of the rare people who think that, yes, the guy should be sued. Every time I tell someone, they're like, really, why? Because, I mean, when you think about it, if you had a business and someone is poaching on it, what would you do? You defend your business. So this is basically what Orbit and United are doing. It's not like anything else where, I mean, it's a dog-eat-dog world. So if I expect to make a certain amount from a flight, and because somebody else is doing something, so I can't make that, I have to defend it. Because otherwise, then everybody else is going to try to.
Let me just kind of recap for viewers who may not have spotted this. This is an issue, particularly over in the States. United Airlines are basically suing this site Skiplagged, and Skiplagged is the product of I see described in one story, a sweet-faced 22-year-old tech whiz kid who's designed a website that shows people how to, in effect, cheat the airlines out of revenue using an insider strategy that's actually been around for years. And the way that it works is that you might get, for example, a non-stop fare from Los Angeles to Dallas, and that might be over, say, $300 one way on a given day. But a fare on the same airline from LA to Austin with a stop in Dallas on the way might be $150, half the price. So you can buy the flight to Austin and simply just get off, ditch the plane in Dallas, and you can see why the airlines are going, oh my God, we don't want people doing that. Is that a sort of good summary of it, Cohen?
Yeah, that's a pretty good summary. And if, what he suggested is that you don't check a bag. But typically what happens is that a lot of people bring bags with them. So what happens when you get on the plane and the agent goes, we have to check your bag because there is no room. They're going to check it to your final destination. So you're going to end up losing out. It's just that I don't see why people think that this is a good thing. But anyway, this is my view.
So when you're advising, because these are wrinkles that you must know backwards, because apart from anything else, you're helping airline employees and their families get the most out of the ticketing system. These are things that you must have been aware of for ages.
Yeah, I mean, those things have been in there for forever, but typically people don't do it because the airlines they have the right to say, hey, you got this ticket, you broke the rules when you got this ticket. They usually don't do it, but they could say, hey, you broke our rules, you're a frequent flyer member, these are the rules of the frequent flyer member, you're out. It's extremely rare when they kick someone out of the frequent flyer program. But, and the thing with this guy is that he says, oh, I didn't know I was doing that. Of course he knew he was doing that. He's not stupid. He sat there and he programmed the whole thing.
Yeah,
I just.
To be fair, the airlines. I mean, they're not even bound under ICAO regulations to even get you where you booked to fly. I mean, so it is a bit rather a one-sided contract.
Well, so here's the thing, though. It's like having worked inside the airlines. I know that people think the airlines don't care, but they actually do. And I say that because I'm the guy that used to take all the phone calls from the customers when they were unhappy about things. I mean, things like in a weather situation, they don't cancel a flight because they go, oh, we're not going to fly. They try their best to do that because it actually costs them more money when they cancel that flight. The crews are in the wrong place, passengers complain, they have to put them up, they have to get hotels, the employees stay late. So it's a knock-on effect when something like that happens. And I don't understand why people just don't understand that.
It must be
in Europe, where we have cancellation compensation, delay compensation. It's sometimes cheaper for an airline now to cancel a flight outright than it is to pay people delay compensation, and maybe you have to put them up overnight in hotels. I absolutely agree with you. I would never accuse the airlines of not paying. The one thing I always do say about airlines is the moment anybody goes to work for one, and pardon, I'm sure you're the exception that proves this rule, is that they become a congenital liar.
So here's one of the weird things, right? Which was the biggest misnomer with the airlines. The agent has the information in their screens, and that is all they have. They can only tell you what's in their screen. And sometimes they literally don't know because the decisions are being made at the very last minute. So when they communicate it is when they know. And the thing is that they have to try to pacify you because you're just going to get angry. And some people do reach across the counter and grab others. I've seen it myself. So it's tough. It's really, really tough being in the customer service industry.
Yeah.
If I may make a comment here, I think this is a very interesting point we've reached, that in fact, from now onwards, airlines are just going to have to charge sector by sector. We can all remember the old IATA rules where you had to take a return ticket, or and if you missed the outbound sector, they cancelled it. We've gone a long way now, and what the airlines should do for everybody is just a sector by sector, and most carriers are doing it, and all this business will disappear.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and they're going to have to change it, and they will end up changing it.
If you want to see an example of wonderful airline service, I do. If you haven't seen it, I recommend you look up on YouTube what LOT Polish Airlines did to celebrate the checking in of their 500,000 to 500,000 787 Dreamliner customer. Just look it up on. See what airlines can do. It's wonderful. It will warm your heart.
I will check that out.
Okay. Just looking ahead for this year, as you know, one of the things I'm quite keen on doing is talking about some of the things that people are going to experience. One of the things that I picked up on in the last week or so was something relating to Virgin and their Virgin Atlantic's news 787 Dreamliner, Birthday Girl is an enlightened aviation development in more ways than one. What they've done is they've started using augmented reality tours. In effect, it's a bit like, I don't know if some of you are aware that the Royal Caribbean Cruise Line, for some of its larger and later ships, has introduced onto its website a version of Street View, Google Street View. And you can walk around the ship and do this augmented reality trip, and that's what Virgin Atlantic are doing. And I mentioned it because it was raised this week. They're using it principally as a training tool, but he said trying to find the here we are. Here's the actual page itself. I don't know if you can see this. But this is they use for training their staff to get them acclimatized to particular aircraft and what's on them. And so you can literally browse around. I'm just turning it now; it's a bit slow. Browse around the aircraft and go up and down and see the cabin, see the equipment and how it's laid out. Now, is this something that you think that we're going to see more airlines and on their websites? Anybody?
Well, I mean, from my way of thinking, all these toys are coming along, more in your motor car and everything else. I've just taken delivery of a car that doesn't have GPS. Everybody thinks this is a bit odd. I do believe at the end of the day, what people are looking for is the bottom line and what it costs. If it's a good airline and the fare's right, people will go into it. Will people look at it online? I suppose people like us might, and some people. But basically, if there's two airlines flying between A and B, Virgin on one route and BA on the same route, you'll go for the airline you like and the cheapest flights.
I don't think. Yeah, it's a bit of a gimmick. I'm not sure I'd bother unless I, wanted to know. I don't know, the shape of the overhead bin or something for a piece I was writing, or colour of the fabric. I mean, I can't see the point really. What the interior of one aeroplane, I suppose, looked at on a website is going to be very much like another.
Yeah, on my side, I tend to agree. I think people are going to go for the cheapest flight, with the exception of being not flying on a horrible airline. So in other words, I think there's going to be this level where people look at a group of airlines that are kind of competitive in the same range. And of course, there's always going to be people going for this bottom airline or this bottom class of airline. But I think as people fly that airline more and have, let's say, issues with that, they're going to start to avoid that. So you're going to be kind of at a price level based on a decent group of airline companies. That's my opinion.
Yeah,
Kevin?
I'd agree there, Mike. Yeah, people do look for the price. That's the first thing that they do. And in pricing, you realize that if your pricing is like $5 difference, you show up in a different place on the pricing scale. And if there's a lot of connections, your airline may not even show up on the first page. So price is really the first thing that drives it. It's fun with the virtual reality. We had, when I worked for the airlines way back when, I think we're actually one of the first airlines to do a virtual reality thing. And you could actually walk through the plane and see it. And then from a company called iPix at the time. And then 911 happened. And they're like, oops, sorry, we can't show that stuff anymore. So it's interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, security. I hadn't actually thought of that. I'm inclined to agree. I don't think it's something that I think it's something we're going to see on, well, unless they get rattled about security, on some websites. Innovative ones like Virgin, who are always looking for new kind of whiz bang things. But it's a post sales gimmick rather than a pre-sales one. It's the sort of thing you buy you make your booking, and then you go on the virtual reality site and check where your seat is and what it looks like. I think that's probably about its only application.
It's important for seating, but people have no clue where they're sitting. They don't even pick seats anyway, so it doesn't really matter. They get on and they bug everybody else. Oh, can you move? So it's.
Yeah, well, I do. I always, when I'm flying with with British Airways, I always go on and book my seat in advance. And I always make sure I get a window. If I'm going into Europe, I always get a port hand window going out and a starboard hand one coming back, so I haven't got the sun shining on me all the way. Yeah.
You're a seasoned traveler. The average traveler, they don't do that.
Okay, let's wrap up with your best prediction for what air passengers are going to either be most aware of or enjoy the most, or what's going to be the big things for them in 2015. Roger.
Well, I think there will be some price decreases, probably. IATA has actually, and this is terribly precise, isn't it? They've forecast an average worldwide fare decrease of 5.1% this year. That, of course, is likely to vary from region to region. But set against that, of course, European economies are extremely sluggish, although the oil price has come down, and that's reducing operating costs by, 12, 15%. A sluggish European economy is likely to affect, I think, the front cabins. So I think that might be a bit optimistic, but I think there's a pretty good chance. I mean, I don't think we're going to see any major fare hikes this year. And I think, well, we will also see a continued increase in, if you like, innovative destinations. I noticed, for example, that 2 airlines are launching flights from the UK, from various UK airports, Flybe and Ryanair, particularly low-cost airlines that are in trouble with their passengers occasionally. Not Flybe, that is. They're both launching flights to Deauville, or Deauville, I should say, in Normandy this year. So those sort of innovative destinations, I think we'll see more and more of those. Other than that, probably an increase in Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi at airport, and I'm hoping that more and more airlines or more and more airports will start to introduce free Wi-Fi in their terminals. It's begun, but it's not widespread enough yet. It should be.
Excellent. Malcolm.
Well, Roger's right. I think it's going to be the year of the Wi-Fi, both in the airports. Most of the airports do it now, some for 30 minutes. I'll tell you what's been very interesting development is the lounges that are now available at the airports. One of the ones that is very poor, in fact, is Terminal 5 at Heathrow, because unless you're a BA business class passenger or have access to their lounge, there's just nowhere to go and sit. Now, in Terminal 4, in the new Terminal 2, which is excellent, there are lounges, so you can go and pay. And these lounges are getting pretty busy. That's an interesting development. more and more lounges are becoming on the airport by specialist companies. There are also business office providers moving into the airports as well. So besides the improvement on the aircraft, the improvement on the ground facilities is coming along very nicely, and that's something that we need to encourage.
Oh, Alistair, two other things. Two new rail links, too, coming on stream this year. One at Toronto, one at Helsinki. They're both getting downtown rail connections, which are also always very welcome.
Excellent. And Luton's getting a shiny new terminal, and yeah, there's all sorts of sorts of things.
They started work, I think, this week, and I think we'll check it out tomorrow. But the link into the airport now works from the M1 Junction 10. I'm actually going to try that tomorrow, so read about it on Monday. The Luton Airport development is a 3 or 4 year project, and it should be a very nice airport at the end, but no air bridges.
Yeah. Kerwin.
I think you're going to see a lot more airlines with in-flight Wi-Fi, but not just domestic flights, but more international, because that's really the key. Everyone want to be kept connected, and with like the 787 and the A350 coming out, it's kind of like expected, right? And more people using their equipment, using your own, your iPad or your computer, or your phone, because that does decrease weight on the airplane, so they don't have to have seatback videos, because not everybody uses seatback videos anyway. So I think that's kind of the trend, and a lot of first class is getting bigger, quote unquote, and premium economy, because we went from taking everything out of the plane and now we're putting it back in, because people want comfort, and some people will pay for it.
Interestingly, you just reminded me, talking about the seatback in-flight entertainment, there was one trend that was with us at the beginning of last year, and I'm not sure where it's gone now. I think British Airways were doing it, and there may have been one or two others. And is this some idea of the, how can I put it, mood-enhancing videos? People watching their cats playing for 8 hours continuously. The famous one was there's a piece of video that lasts about that sort of time that on the Norwegian railway from Bergen to Oslo, and it's taken out of the front of the train, and people sit on aeroplanes watching this thing, and it induces just sort of a nice relaxed feeling. I don't know if that's a trend that's going to stick with us or whether it's already gone by the by, but I do remember reading several in-flight product managers talking about it. So I don't know if any of you encountered that one?
Roger ought to talk about London to Brighton in 2 minutes.
I wouldn't mind but we're just sort of skiing gently down a nice powder run for 8 hours, but no, I think it's quite a good idea, actually. Whatever switches you on, and there's plenty of capacity in these systems. Why not?
Mike, what about you? Have you got any ideas?
I hope that this is what happens. This is maybe not my prediction, but kind of a hope. I hope that we see more of a shift towards airlines that are the bread and butter airlines, offering more and more low-cost options. For example, like KLM having Transavia, or Air France having an option like HOP, which is a low-cost airline with a major airline, but offering service that's kind of in between. So in other words, you're getting a price close to Ryanair when you fly on HOP or Transavia. It's maybe a little bit more. We're talking like maybe 5 or 10 or 20 euros more. But you get most of the benefits of flying major airlines. So you don't have to listen to people trying to sell lottery tickets or smokeless cigarettes or things of that nature, but you're getting that discount. And I hope that's a trend that continues, because flying, let's say, Transavia is much more comfortable than, let's say, flying Ryanair. And I think that that's a trend you're going to see in Europe, where you're not going to see the bottom end grow, but you're going to see something just above the bottom end flourish and take charge and kind of be where people are treated more like individuals and less like cattle in some of the cheap airlines.
That's what I was saying about Norwegian.
Yeah,
I'm sorry?
it's interesting. We're seeing that trend also with Ryanair, who have all these years have steadfastly been as absolutely brutal as they can be in their products, and are now introducing, for example, boarding passes.
Yeah,
bookable
I mean that whole thing with Ryan
reservations,
the boarding passes and that stampede up to the front. I hope the future gets rid of that type of travel and where people are treated more like individuals and less like cattle, but at a decent price. So that's my hope, and I hope that's a trend that moves forward.
Can I just say two things on this? First of all, I hope that somebody from Wizz Air is watching. If you've ever had the misfortune to fly on Wizz Air, very good airline, nice cabin service, but you have to fight with 180 poles to get on board. It's impossible. The other thing about Ryanair, I think it's overstated. They've got a new whiz on. If it's a busing point, they put you into the buses, so there's 180 passengers again, 2 buses of 90, and they will hold you on the apron until they're ready. So they bring you out well in advance of the aircraft, and you're sitting there. That's how they do this 25-minute turnaround. And we know something about this because I was caught the other day at an Italian airport. It was quite hot. 90 of us stuffed into this bus, waiting for them to turn the aircraft round.
Yeah.
So Mark, a quick question on that, because I hear people talk about the service they receive on these low-cost carriers. Will you fly them again?
I avoid not. I avoid flying Ryanair strictly for that reason, and that's why lately I've been only flying with Hop, with Transavia, with the major airlines, but on their budget.
Yeah, budget.
And that's, I even look when I book flights and whatnot based on what they have to offer, strictly so I don't fly Ryanair. I haven't flown Ryanair in over 2 years, and I intend not to fly them as much as possible.
What about EasyJet? I've always been quite satisfied with EasyJet.
I'm happy with EasyJet, but for me, it's that process of who goes there first. If it's only EasyJet, then that's who I'll have to go with.
Right.
But if it's a preference thing, I will usually fly British Airways because the prices are not in Europe that different these days, and I get a grown-up product. And so, exactly as Mike's suggesting, I'm going for something that's a bit more premium.
Well,
Yeah,
sometimes I've got to dispute that. Sometimes they are much more expensive. It just really depends what route.
Yeah.
I mean, I've just had to book a single fare back from Milan from our Guild AGM, and believe me, the difference between BA and Ryanair was enormous.
Well, it might be now, Roger, but I've done the same thing and did it ages ago. You have to book in advance, you see, mate.
No, the difference was enormous. I probably could have got a cheaper fare with British Airways maybe 3 or 4 months ago, but I had to do this in extremis because I couldn't do it until this week.
Well,
I flew.
You get miles, and you get to use the lounge. I mean, it's such a much better service. Like, I've flown Ryanair and I've flown EasyJet, and what I do, I look at all their rules. So I knew I had a backpack that they think is bigger, so I paid for it beforehand. I knew I had to print my boarding pass beforehand, so I paid for it. I'm not going to the airport with all my stuff packed on me and trying to get to the system because I don't want to be hassled. Either that, I just go on a different airline that I don't get hassled.
Well, I flew recently from Dusseldorf to London City Airport, and I flew that direct flight with British Air, but it was their lower cost version. I forget the name, and it was only like maybe $30 more, 30 euros more to fly that into London City than it was to, let's say, fly another budget, let's say Ryanair into it wasn't Heathrow, but it was one north of the city. And for that, I definitely... I'm sorry?
Stansted or Luton.
Yes, exactly. And for me, I was looking both at the time available or the time I had available, and of course making the connection. Let's say from Stanford or from Stanfield. Sorry.
Stansted.
Stansted, from Stansted all the way to the area where we were going for the conference, and yeah, I just chose to spend the extra money, and it was definitely worth flying that BA and not having any issues and flying into a place where I wanted to go. So for me, I'll spend some money, not a lot of money more. I won't spend 100% more, but if I'm spending, let's say, 15, 20, 30% more, if it offers a good service, I'd rather pay a little bit more for better service. Not a lot more, but a little more.
Gotcha.
BA at London City is common rated on its parallel flights out of Heathrow, and they use the Embraer 195. Very, very comfortable, and most of the fares are very good. But I had to do some research yesterday from London to Tel Aviv. £91 return, the cheapest I could go on EasyJet. £346 on British Airways, and £347 on El Al.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. No, you're right. You're right.
It'd be easy to get for me on that situation. So.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, I want the miles.
Yes, that's the other thing. Of course, it's the miles with BA. Okay. On that note, I think we'll probably leave it there. Haven't got a fixed plan for next week's edition, a topic for next week. I've got a couple in mind, but it may wind up as one of Mike's excellent little travel guides, and we'll pick one of his destinations and talk about that. But that will be on the website, so you can find it there, and obviously I'll promote it in advance anyway. My thanks to everybody, Kerwin McKenzie, to Malcolm Ginsberg, obviously to Mike and to Roger Bray for joining me, and we'll be back, as I say, next week at the same time. So for us, bye for now.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for a great discussion.
Yeah, interesting.